to Behind the Tweet podcast. I'm your host, Christine Parks, Chief Communications Officer for Temple ISD. Well, today we are extremely honored to have Temple PD Chief Sean Reynolds along with Dr. Ott, and thank you both for being here today, and we are going to go ahead and jump right in. On May 12th, Dr. Ott, you had a tweet featuring Police Chief Reynolds and one of our middle school students named Gabriel, and it generated over 1,500 impressions. There's a series of 3 photos that show Chief Reynolds presenting Gabriel with some TPD swag and a TPD coin, and the tweet reads, "Appreciate Police Chief Sean Reynolds for making a difference in Gabriel's life. Gabriel has wanted to be a police officer since he was 5 years old and has wanted to meet our police chief, and he stopped by to pay him a visit, provide some career guidance, and answer questions." Dr. Ott, let's start with you, and can you tell us a little bit about Gabriel and how you came to know his future aspirations?
I was on regular campus visits, and Travis Science Academy was next up on the campus visits, and I walked in. I was in and out of the hallways and classrooms, and I ran into Gabriel, and he had come up to me, and I asked him about how school's going as we're nearing the end of the year, and what are some of his interests as he thinks about high school, and of course he brought up police work. And he talked about how he's had an interest in becoming a police officer since he was 5 years old. And I think that threw me a little bit, because when you hear someone that age speaking about something with that level of conviction, that's really a good thing, and it's highly unusual. So I think hearing that sparked my interest in engaging a little bit more in the conversation. And then somewhere, at some point in time, he had mentioned that he wanted to meet Chief Reynolds. So he knew our police chief by name. I think that says a lot about Gabriel's interest, but it also says a lot about our police chief in Temple and how involved he is in the community, to be a household name among one of our middle school students. And so I told him that I would hope to be able to arrange that, and the rest is history.
And if I'm not mistaken, the visit itself was a surprise. Gabriel didn't know that y'all were coming that day. Is that right?
That is correct. Gabriel knew that I was working on it, but never really gave him a specific date. I'd just say, hey, we're working on it. And so when the day actually came, he was unaware and a bit surprised.
And you can actually see the surprise actually in one of the pictures for sure. And Chief Reynolds, can you share with us what that moment was like when you introduced yourself to Gabriel?
Well, it was a fantastic opportunity, and I believe that anytime you get to speak into the life of a child, it's a worthwhile investment. Children's kids, teens, young adults, they're always watching us, and they're taking in more than we think they are. So I really considered it a high honor to have met Gabriel and to know that he is and has wanted to be a police officer for some time. That meant a great deal to me. It does my heart good to know that we have good young men and women that are willing to accept the challenge of the policing profession.
And what did you say to him, and what did he say to you? Do you recall?
Well, I introduced myself and asked him about his desire to be a police officer, and of course I gave him some Temple Police Department swag, and we spoke about his efforts in school, we spoke about his grades, we spoke about his family. I think in many regards he was somewhat off kilter, taken aback by the visit, not knowing when it was going to come. So, but we had a lot of conversations. He spoke about how he likes to help people, and that's essentially the role of a police officer. It's the fundamental role for police officers. And to be quite honest, as I mentioned, I think he was a bit caught off guard by our surprise visit. And perhaps he was more quiet than he normally is. But we did talk about his family. We talked about their support for him, his school, and his desire to serve the community. And quite honestly, he's just a very impressive young man.
Well, Chief Reynolds, for anyone who's had the chance to interact with you, it is no surprise to see you take such an interest in supporting and encouraging our student like this. You are truly active throughout the community. You're everywhere all the time. In fact, you even rival Dr. Ott in some respects as far as your involvement. But why is it important to you to be so visible in the community?
Well, I believe that presence matters. There are three things that I often speak about internally and externally within the police department, and those are relationships, trust, and communication. It's hard to really build on any of these items if you're not present. Relationships build trust. Trust builds really good communication. However, again, it's difficult to build on any of these if you're not present. I also believe that it's part of our mission statement, protecting, serving, and working with our community to prevent, reduce, and solve crime with integrity, honor, and dedication. And ultimately, I work for the citizens, and they have every right to access me and find me and talk to me.
Well, I will say that I don't think any entity in our community has benefited more from your leadership and than Temple ISD. And I know that you and Dr. Ott talk frequently. You guys have developed an incredible relationship, and so I'd like for us to change gears and talk a little bit about school safety in terms of the relationship. And so, Dr. Ott, there truly for you, I know, is no greater responsibility than ensuring the safety of our 8,600 plus students and 1,400 staff members daily. Will you talk about how your relationship with Chief Reynolds and TPD feeds into that?
As superintendents, we have the responsibility to, before anything else, even before you get into teaching and learning, is to make sure that you have safe spaces to do that. If spaces are safe, then it allows your staff to maximize their abilities. It allows your children to maximize their opportunities for learning. And really, when you think about leveraging a community's resources to do that, the number one relationship has to start with your local police department. And I'm very proud to say that our relationship is very close. It's been commented by different people in the community in terms of how visible it is that we work very close in tandem. We have similar interests. He is so responsible. Chief Reynolds will always pick up the phone no matter where he's at. In fact, truth be told, he answered the phone one time when he was in Cancun when I called him, and that's the absolute truth, and I didn't know that. And Chief, I apologize for calling you when you're in Cancun. It did happen. And he told me after the phone call, so I wouldn't get off, so I would actually finish everything I was trying to talk with him about. He's very responsive. I think beyond that, though, I trust his expertise and his genuine care for the community. When you referenced that earlier, he's everywhere, and his value system has completely cascaded throughout his staff, and so we trust his force, his police force, all of his men and women. And it's not just what they do, but how they do it, how they serve. And so we feel like we're really in a great position to ensure safety and do everything we can to have plans and respond. God forbid if anything like that ever happens. So we're just truly blessed in Temple ISD to have Chief Reynolds and his staff as part of our team and serving kids.
One of the things that we talk about as far as safety is concerned as a district, we really categorize our planning and strategies into two different ways. One, those that are prevention and preventative type strategies, and then others that are really about preparedness when and if we would ever find ourselves in a situation that would require Temple PD to be on campus to take over during a crisis. So can you both talk through some of the preparedness steps that have been implemented collaboratively between the district and Temple PD to respond in case there ever was an emergency on campus?
Well, sure. We really began the conversation. I arrived June 1st of 2020, and that's when the conversation started. And then, of course, May 24th of last year, following the tragedy in Uvalde, we had additional conversations, and it included many of the topics that you've mentioned, several safety and security protocols, crisis plans, building floor plans, access drills and training. One of the things that we did following May 24th, when I contacted Dr. Ott, I said, you're going to see a lot more police officers on campus. And we did that for a number of reasons, but probably not the typical reasons that most folks would think of. There were no credible threats. But we wanted to do it because we knew there would be a level of uncertainty, of fearfulness within students, staff, facilities maintenance folks, and we wanted to reassure them so that they finished the school year on a high note. And we did. We completed that from May 24th through the remainder of the school year. And our plans continue with discussions on school safety and security.
Yeah, and I would make two comments. One, I know Chief Reynolds talked about just the idea of them being there and present on campuses to finish out the year. But the thing I'd add to that is not just that they were there, but how they served. And they did a lot of things that they weren't asked to do. And it wasn't just standing there and representing, hey, I'm here to be your safety net, but it was also helping students in and out of cars. It was tying shoes. It was giving flowers to staff. I mean, all kinds of things to, try to make people feel like they were in a safe place and build relationships, which is key. And that's a value that you heard Chief mention earlier. And so it was great to see his policemen and women doing that. The other thing I would say is after Uvalde, we really leaned on our police department to evaluate crisis plans, building floor plans, tell us wherever we had gaps, and so we made those adjustments. The other thing is it's one thing to have a plan, but it's another to make sure that first responders have minimal obstacles so they can execute. And I think that the onus of that a lot of times is on us as school systems. And so in working with Chief Reynolds and his staff, what are some ways we could minimize that? So we renumbered our exterior doors in a way that would be familiar so they could get to the threat as soon as possible. Provided access to our school cameras, to police chief and another designated staff member, so they had eyes and ears inside the building if things were to ever happen. Building access by all patrol cars, that's very important. We want to make sure we minimize any obstacles so they can do what they're trained to do, and that's to eliminate the threat and to protect and serve. And so we really talked and went through those things, and some ideas that Chief Reynolds brought to the table that we're doing now, as you well know, is tabletop exercises. That was one. It's one thing to have a plan, but you should make that plan breathe before you have a threat. And so going through those scenarios and talking about those as a leadership team and campuses so we can really think through and try to get our minds working in a way that if those things happen, we'll reduce the response time and be able to do the things that we need to do. And in full disclosure, tabletop those were things that I was not doing with my senior leadership team when I was first hired, but per the counsel of Chief Reynolds and Police Department, we are doing those now, as you well know, and we'll continue to do those.
And, that is a great example, too, just talking about the relationship between the two of you. And, that relationship and that collaboration, it truly builds trust and it builds confidence, not only for our staffs, but for our community as well. And, Chief Reynolds, we receive a lot of feedback in this office on a lot of different things. And I will say, I believe that the feedback that we heard about TPD's presence on our campus in the days after Uvalde was probably the most moving and the most positive and touching feedback that we've received on anything. Parents and staff members and students were just so appreciative just to have your police force there on campus. And again, as Dr. Ott talked about, not in a we're here to keep you safe kind of a way, which of course they were, but in a we're just here to support. We are here for you. We are here to do whatever we need. And so truly, I know Dr. Ott has extended our thanks on that, but it was just it was something that I don't know that I don't think I'll ever forget that because it was truly moving and how that simple act made people feel safe and made them feel cared for. And Dr. Ott, I do want to just kind of make sure that we say it again. I've heard you say it multiple times, and I know that this is something that you and Chief Reynolds have discussed, but for everyone who's listening, can you tell us who will be in charge if we ever find ourselves facing an active shooter emergency on one of our campuses?
First responder. When they arrive on the scene, they control the scene, and we do as they say. They are the ones in charge. They know how to protect us even better than we know, and so we turn that over to them. And if we need to get out of their way, we get out of their way. If we need to get involved in things, we just do what they say. And so they are completely in charge, and that is a clear expectation among our staff.
And again, that relationship builds that trust that we know that we are in good hands and that our police force will take care of us. And we are truly grateful that we have a police chief that is willing to take charge and protect all of those that you serve. And Chief, it's been great having you here today with us. Anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I would add that it's really an honor to be able to serve alongside the men and women of the Temple Police Department. For your listeners, I would tell you that we kind of have a worldwide phenomenon occurring with challenges in law enforcement recruiting, and I didn't want to miss an opportunity to do some shameless marketing while we're here. So that if you're listening and you know men and women of good character, please direct them to the website jointemplepd.com. There's no spaces in there to research more about the Temple Police Department. There's a lot of great opportunities, very competitive salary, retirements, take-home vehicles, and a number of incentives as well. We'd love to hear from you.
Dr. Ott, anything else you'd like to add?
I think I would say, one, I would agree with Chief Reynolds. What a great opportunity you'd have to serve if you want to get into police work, to work for the Temple Police Department. He didn't ask me to say that. I'm going to say it. But, you'd be joining a force. I would characterize them as guardian angels, not as bouncers. I mean, they can certainly do that if they need to, but they are guardian angels. And I think I'm most proud of what I've seen the police force do, and upon his arrival, when they first came, when Chief Reynolds first came, we as a community, not they, we as a community were in the middle of a very difficult situation, and so he had to bring what I would call healing hands to the community, and that's an ongoing process. But he's also brought helping hands too, and they have done a great job with our families and community, and just the ways they interact. The Badges with Burgers event, all kinds of things that they do to engage the community. It's a wonderful situation, great relationships, and it's a great team to be on. And I'm just glad to be able to work with them, and so are we as a whole school district.
For all of the Gabriels that are out there, I'm so grateful that, Chief Reynolds, you provide such an incredible example of integrity and courage, you and your entire police force, and we truly appreciate the difference that you make. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. Please join us next time for another episode of Behind the Tweet.